For $12, the cowboy bought a horse, but the Apache chief sent 2 daughters as part of the deal. Eli had always been a restless soul. The wide-open plains called to him with a voice he could never ignore. From the time he was a boy, he had dreamed of riding the trails, feeling the wind on his face and seeing the horizon stretch endlessly ahead. But life on the ranch had taught him patience, hard work, and the value of saving every penny he earned. By the time he turned 23, Eli had scraped together $12 from months of tending cattle and helping neighboring farms. It wasn't much, but to him, it represented freedom, the promise of adventure beyond the familiar fences of home. One bright morning, Eli set out with a small pack on his back and a determination that felt heavier than the tiny bundle of coins in his pocket. The sun was just beginning to climb, painting the sky with soft orange and pink hues, and the smell of fresh dew on the grass filled the air. He walked through the dusty trail that led to the edge of the frontier, where traders, settlers, and native communities met for exchanges that were sometimes strange, often unexpected, but always important for life in that harsh land. As Eli approached the trading post, he could see a small crowd gathered near the corral. A few traders were haggling over supplies, while others examined horses, mules, and wagons. But Eli's eyes were drawn to a single horse that stood slightly apart from the rest. The animal was tall and strong, with a glossy coat that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. Its mane was dark and flowing, and its eyes held a sharp intelligence that made Eli stop in his tracks. He had seen many horses before, but this one seemed different, almost as if it understood him before he even spoke. The horse's owner stood nearby, a tall man with deep, thoughtful eyes, dressed in traditional Apache attire. Eli knew the man was the chief of his community. He carried himself with a quiet authority, and yet there was a warmth in his gaze that suggested wisdom beyond years. Eli had heard stories about this chief, how he had maintained peace among neighboring tribes, how he negotiated trades fairly, and how he valued honor above all else. Eli swallowed nervously. Buying a horse was one thing, but dealing with a respected leader like this was another. Eli stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. He nodded respectfully. "Good morning, sir. I'm Eli. I've come to see your horse." The chief nodded in return, his expression calm but unreadable. "I know who you are," he said in a voice that carried both authority and curiosity. "You've worked hard, boy. What do you offer for him?" Eli hesitated, then reached into his pocket and held out the $12 he had saved so carefully. "This is all I have, sir." $12. The chief looked at the coins, then back at Eli. He did not speak for a long moment, studying the young cowboy as though weighing something far more important than money. Finally, he spoke. $12 is small for this horse. He is strong, loyal, and will carry you far. Are you prepared for the cost that is not measured in coins? Eli furrowed his brow. I don't understand, sir. I have the money. Isn't that enough?" The chief shook his head slowly, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "In our ways, a horse is not bought only with money. Strength, courage, and respect for life are part of the deal, but there is another way. You may have the horse if you accept a gift that comes with him." Eli's curiosity turned into unease. "A gift?" he asked cautiously. The chief gestured toward the edge of the corral, where 2 young women stood quietly, their eyes calm but curious. "My daughters," the chief said simply. "They will accompany you as part of this journey. They are strong, capable, and wise beyond their years. You will not find better companions to travel with this horse." Eli's jaw dropped. He had expected a negotiation about coins, maybe a small favor or promise, but this was entirely unexpected. He looked from the chief to the sisters, then back again, unsure what to say. The sisters, dressed in simple but elegant clothing, observed him with a quiet confidence. There was no fear in their eyes, only a calmness that made Eli feel both intimidated and strangely reassured. I don't know what to say," he admitted finally, scratching the back of his neck. "I only came for a horse. I did." His words trailed off as he tried to find a polite way to refuse, but the chief's gaze stopped him. There was no anger there, only expectation. Eli realized that refusing could be seen as disrespectful, and in that moment he understood the gravity of the situation. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. "If that is your wish, I will accept." The chief smiled, a warm, knowing smile. "Then the deal is done." He turned to his daughters. "You will travel with him, teach him, guide him, and share your ways. You have his respect and he will have yours." The sisters stepped forward. Eli noticed the careful way they moved, almost in harmony with the horse, their eyes scanning the surroundings as if reading every detail. One of them, slightly older, spoke softly, "We will go with you. But know this, traveler, the plains are not gentle. You must be ready to learn, not just to lead." Eli felt a mix of awe and nervousness. He had never met anyone like them. They were not just companions, they were teachers, guides, and perhaps even a challenge to his understanding of the world. He nodded. "I'll do my best," he said, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. With the agreement made, Eli led the horse out of the corral, feeling its powerful muscles ripple beneath him. The sisters walked beside him, their presence both comforting and humbling. As they moved down the trail away from the trading post, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows on the ground. Eli could feel the start of a journey unlike any he had ever imagined. This was not just a trip to find adventure, it was a crossing of worlds, a meeting of traditions, and a test of character that would shape him in ways he could not yet see. Along the way, Eli noticed small things about his companions. The elder sister seemed to notice every detail of the land. The tracks of animals, the smell of water, the patterns of the wind. The younger one was quieter, observing him, gauging his reactions, but there was a spark of curiosity in her eyes that reminded him of his own restless spirit. They did not speak much at first, but their silence was not uncomfortable. It was filled with understanding, a silent acknowledgement that this journey would teach all of them lessons beyond the ordinary. By midday, the group had stopped to rest near a small stream. Eli dismounted, letting the horse drink, and the sisters gathered wild herbs nearby. He watched them, feeling a sense of wonder he had never experienced before. He realized that this journey would require him to be more than a cowboy with coins and ambition. It would demand patience, respect, and an open heart. As they sat under the shade of a large oak tree, Eli began to share stories of his life on the ranch, of cattle drives and long nights under the stars. The sisters listened quietly, occasionally asking questions, their voices soft but firm. In return, they spoke of their own world, the customs of their people, the importance of family, and the lessons of living in harmony with the land. Eli felt a connection forming, fragile but undeniable. By the time the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting golden light across the plains, Eli understood that this first day was only the beginning. The horse, strong and patient, carried them steadily forward. The sisters, wise and cautious, walked beside him, teaching him to see the world differently. And Eli, once just a young cowboy with $12 and a dream, began to feel that he was part of something much larger, a journey of discovery, respect, and unexpected companionship. As night fell and they set up a small camp, Eli couldn't help but feel grateful. $12 had bought him a horse, yes, but it had also brought him an adventure he would never forget, companions he would always respect, and a lesson in life that no coin could ever purchase. The fire crackled, the stars shimmered above, and Eli realized that the frontier was not just a place. It was a teacher, and he had just begun to learn its ways. The morning sun painted the plains in gold as Eli mounted his new horse. The sisters walked beside him, moving with quiet grace. The elder one carried a small satchel filled with dried herbs and food, while the younger sister kept an attentive eye on the horse, whispering soft words to calm it. Eli had never seen anyone interact with an animal so respectfully, and he realized that he had much to learn, not just about survival on the plains, but about understanding those around him. The first few hours of travel were awkward. Eli kept trying to make conversation, asking questions about the land, the animals, and their journey ahead. The sisters responded politely but briefly. They seemed cautious, as though measuring his character and intentions. The elder sister, whose name was Kaya, finally spoke in a calm, firm voice. "The plains are wide and open, but they are not empty. You must always watch, always listen, and always respect the land. It will teach you if you are willing to learn." Eli nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He was used to thinking of the land as a place to ride and work, but Kaya's perspective made him realize that there was a rhythm, a life, and a spirit in the plains that he had never considered. The younger sister, named Ayana, smiled softly at him, her eyes full of quiet understanding. "We will help you," she said, "but you must be patient. The journey is long and the lessons will not come all at once." As the day stretched on, Eli began to notice small details he had ignored before. The way the wind shifted direction, carrying the scent of distant water, the tracks of a fox leading toward a thicket, or the faint markings of deer in the soft soil. Kaya pointed out edible plants along the trail and explained how to find water in hidden pockets where the ground seemed dry. Yana taught him how to approach the horse gently, speaking softly to gain its trust rather than relying on force. Eli found himself amazed at how much he had taken for granted. On the ranch, he had thought he knew the land, the animals, and the work required to survive. But traveling with the sisters showed him that there was always more to learn, that understanding came from observation, patience, and respect. He felt a growing sense of humility, mixed with admiration for their wisdom. Around midday, they reached a small stream, its water clear and cool. Eli dismounted, allowing the horse to drink while Kaya and Ayana set up a simple lunch of bread, dried meat, and fruit. The sisters moved with efficiency and quiet coordination, their actions reflecting years of practice and knowledge. Eli sat nearby, eating slowly, and realized that this journey was shaping him in ways he hadn't anticipated. As they rested, Kaya spoke about the traditions of their people. She told stories of their ancestors, of bravery, wisdom, and the importance of living in harmony with nature. She explained how every plant, every animal, and every star had a lesson to offer, if one was willing to listen. Eli listened intently, feeling a connection to something larger than himself, a world where respect and understanding mattered more than speed or strength. Yana, quieter than her sister, shared her own perspective. She spoke of the challenges faced by their community, of the need to balance tradition with survival in a changing world. She spoke of courage, not the kind shown in fights or daring adventures, but the quiet courage required to face fear, uncertainty, and the unknown. Eli realized that she too was teaching him, not just through words, but through her presence, her calm, and her attentiveness to the world around them. By the afternoon, the trio had traveled several miles, moving steadily across rolling hills and open plains. The horse, patient and strong, carried Eli with ease, while the sisters walked alongside, sometimes pointing out hidden paths or warning of uneven ground. The journey was tiring, but Eli felt invigorated. He was no longer just a young cowboy with a horse. He was part of a small, unexpected family learning lessons that money could never buy. As the sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the land, Eli noticed the first signs of wildlife. A herd of deer grazed in the distance, and birds circled high above. Kaya explained how to read the movements of animals, how to understand the signs of water, predators, and changing weather. She taught him to move quietly, to observe, and to respect the lives of the creatures they encountered. Eli felt a sense of wonder he had never known. The plains were alive, and he was finally beginning to see it. During a brief stop near a shaded grove, Eli tried to talk about himself, about his life on the ranch, his dreams, and the reasons he had wanted to leave. Kaya and Ayana listened patiently, asking questions that encouraged him to think, reflect, and share. They never judged, but they challenged him to consider different perspectives. Eli realized that he had always been focused on work, money, and freedom in a narrow sense. Now he began to understand that freedom also meant understanding, connection, and respect for the world around him. As evening approached, the group set up a small camp. Eli learned how to make a simple fire, and the sisters taught him how to gather safe wood, start the flames without striking sparks carelessly, and maintain warmth through the night. They prepared a modest meal, and Eli noticed how even the simplest tasks were done with care and attention. Eating together, he felt a sense of community he had never experienced on his own. Under the fading light of dusk, Kaya pointed to the horizon. "See the hills in the distance. That is where we will rest tonight, but remember, the land always changes. We must always be ready to adapt." Yana nodded, adding, "And we must always watch the signs. The plains speak if you listen." Eli looked around him, feeling the vastness of the landscape and the weight of responsibility. He realized that this journey was teaching him patience, observation, and respect, not just for the land, but for the people who understood it so deeply. He felt grateful for the sisters' guidance, and a quiet determination settled in his heart. He would not fail this journey. Night fell, and the stars began to fill the sky with their soft glow. Eli lay on a blanket beside the fire, the horse nearby, and listened as Kaya and Ayana shared stories of their childhood, of the lessons learned from elders, and of their hopes for the future. The words were simple, but the wisdom within them was profound. Eli felt a sense of peace he had never known, understanding that this journey was as much about discovering himself as it was about traveling across the plains. As he drifted to sleep, Eli reflected on the day. $12 had brought him a horse, yes, but it had also brought him knowledge, companionship, and the beginning of a transformation. He understood that the sisters were not just part of the deal. They were teachers, guides, and mirrors reflecting the kind of person he could become. The plains were wide and endless, but he felt ready to meet whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that he was not alone. The fire crackled softly as the night deepened, and Eli realized that the first day of his journey had changed him in ways he could not yet fully grasp. The lessons of patience, observation, and respect would guide him in the days to come. The horse, steadfast and calm, seemed to understand its new role, while Kaya and Ayana's quiet presence offered reassurance and wisdom. Together, they were a small, unlikely family bound not by blood, but by trust, respect, and the shared experience of walking the trail between two worlds. And so, under the endless sky, Eli drifted into sleep with a sense of anticipation. The plains had many lessons still to teach, and he was ready to learn them all. With the horse beneath him, the sisters beside him, and the horizon stretching infinitely ahead, Eli understood that his journey was no longer just about adventure. It was about growth, understanding, and discovering the true meaning of respect and connection. The morning dawned. Cool and crisp, the kind of morning that carried the smell of dew and the faint scent of wildflowers in the wind. Eli woke early, the horse already restless nearby, pawing at the ground as if eager to start the day. Kaya and Ayana were already awake, quietly preparing for the journey ahead. The sisters moved with calm efficiency, folding blankets, checking supplies, and whispering softly to the horse. Eli watched them, realizing again how much he relied on their knowledge and skill. He could no longer think of himself as just a young cowboy with a horse. He was part of a team, and the team demanded courage, patience, and careful attention. As they began traveling, the landscape slowly changed. Rolling plains gave way to low hills, then rocky outcrops that challenged the horse and tested Eli's riding skills. He realized that he had taken smooth paths for granted on the ranch. The sisters guided him carefully, showing him where to place his feet, how to shift his weight, and how to sense the horse's movements. Eli felt a growing respect for their experience. These were not just guides, they were teachers, showing him the difference between strength and skill, between haste and understanding. By midday, the sun beat down heavily, and the small trail they followed became rougher. Eli's horse stumbled once on loose stones, and for a brief moment, fear shot through him. Kaya quickly stepped forward, placing a hand on the horse's shoulder, whispering words that calmed both the animal and Eli. "Steady," she said softly. "The path is rough, but we can manage if we move with care." Yana handed Eli a small bottle of water, her eyes meeting his with a silent encouragement. He drank deeply, feeling a sense of gratitude he could not put into words. As they continued, clouds began to gather on the horizon. The wind shifted, carrying with it the distant sound of thunder. Eli's heart began to race. He had experienced storms before, but out here with only a horse and 2 companions, he felt the vulnerability of their situation. Kaya noticed his tension. "The plains speak, Eli," she said. "They warn you when danger approaches. You must pay attention or you will be unprepared." Yana added, "We are stronger together. Do not fear what comes, but respect it." Before long, the storm hit. Rain fell in sheets, drenching the trio within minutes. The wind howled across the open hills, and the horse neighed nervously. Eli gripped the reins tightly, trying to keep control, while Kaya and Ayana guided the horse from the sides, moving with precision and care. The rain made the trail slippery, turning the path into a muddy challenge. Eli stumbled once, nearly losing his balance, but Ayana caught him, steadying him with a firm hand. "Watch your steps," she said calmly, though her eyes reflected the seriousness of the situation. The storm lasted for hours, and they sought shelter under a small overhang of rocks. The horse huddled close, shivering slightly, and Eli realized how fragile life on the plains could be. He had thought the hardest part of this journey would be riding long distances, but now he understood that nature itself could be the greatest teacher, and sometimes the harshest. The sisters worked quickly to build a small fire under the shelter, using dry kindling they had carried and careful movements to avoid smoke in the rain. Eli helped as best he could, learning to move with purpose rather than panic. As the rain eased, Eli took a moment to reflect. He had faced many challenges on the ranch, cattle drives, sudden storms, and nights of hard labor, but none had tested him like this. Here, in the open plains, every decision carried weight. One wrong step could hurt the horse, put a companion in danger, or even leave him stranded. He realized that courage was not about fearlessness. It was about moving forward despite fear, with patience, respect, and thought. The sisters spoke little during the storm, but their actions conveyed lessons more powerful than words. Kaya's calmness showed leadership, Ayana's attentiveness showed care, and both demonstrated that strength was measured by knowledge, skill, and patience rather than brute force. Eli felt humbled and inspired. He began to see the bond forming between them, not one forced by circumstance but built on trust, shared struggle, and mutual respect. After the storm passed, the trail became even more challenging. Fallen branches, mudslides, and uneven rocks slowed their progress. Eli's muscles ached from constant attention and riding, but he found a strange satisfaction in the work. Each obstacle they overcame together strengthened their connection and built his confidence. He began to anticipate the horse's movements, learning to guide rather than control. He watched the sisters, mimicking their careful steps, learning to read the land as they did. Mid-afternoon, they encountered their first real threat. A small pack of wild coyotes appeared on the ridge above. their eyes gleaming and teeth bared as they assessed the trio. Eli's instinct was to reach for a weapon he did not carry, but Kaya raised a hand, signaling him to stay calm. "Do not panic," she said. "They are wary of humans. Move slowly, speak softly." The sisters began to sing in a low, steady voice, a melody unfamiliar to Eli but soothing to the coyotes. Gradually, the animals backed away, disappearing into the underbrush. Eli marveled at their courage and knowledge. Where he might have panicked, they showed calm wisdom. The encounter reminded Eli that danger was always present, but it could be faced with careful thought, respect, and unity. He felt his confidence grow, not because he had fought, but because he had observed, learned, and trusted. The sisters' guidance was becoming a part of him, teaching him to be both alert and composed, strong yet gentle. As the day wore on, fatigue set in. They reached a small clearing, where a stream glimmered under the late afternoon sun. Eli dismounted and allowed the horse to drink, while Kaya and Ayana prepared a simple meal from their supplies. He watched them work with quiet admiration. Even in the midst of exhaustion, they moved with precision, care, and patience. He realized that the lessons he was learning were not just about survival, they were about life, about the way one approached challenges, about respect for others and for the world around him. After eating, Eli decided to talk with the sisters. "I've faced storms and dangers before," he said, "but nothing like today. I thought I knew courage, but now I'm not sure." Kaya smiled softly. "Courage is not about fighting fear or storms," she said. "It is about understanding them, learning from them, and moving forward without harm to yourself or others." Yana added, "And it is about trust. Trust the land, trust the horse, trust your companions. Together, you are stronger than any storm." Eli reflected on their words, feeling a quiet sense of growth. He understood that he had been reckless at times, thinking that his strength alone could carry him through challenges. Now, he saw that true strength came from awareness, patience, and collaboration. He felt a bond with the sisters that went beyond necessity. It was a connection formed through shared experience, mutual respect, and the lessons of the land. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long, golden shadows, they set up camp for the night. Eli helped gather firewood, build a small shelter, and tend to the horse. Kaya and Ayana moved gracefully, their presence calm and reassuring. Together, they shared stories, laughter, and reflections from the day. Eli realized that this journey was no longer just about reaching a destination. It was about learning, growing, and discovering the depth of courage, wisdom, and companionship. That night, as he lay on a blanket under the stars, Eli thought about the events of the day. The storm, the coyotes, and the rough terrain had tested him in ways he had never imagined. But he also knew that he had learned more in a single day than he had in months or years on the ranch. He felt gratitude for the sisters' guidance, the horse's patience, and the land itself, which had taught him lessons without words. He drifted into sleep with a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and perhaps more dangers, but he no longer feared them. He had begun to understand that life on the plains required courage not just of body, but of mind and spirit. The journey was shaping him, teaching him to be thoughtful, careful, and aware. And most importantly, it was teaching him to value trust, respect, and the bonds formed with those who walked alongside him. Eli's first real trials had ended, but he knew this was only the beginning. The plains were vast, unpredictable, and full of surprises. Yet, with Kaya and Ayana at his side and his faithful horse beneath him, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. He realized that true courage came from embracing uncertainty, learning from it, and growing stronger with each challenge. The journey had already changed him, and he knew that the lessons of today would guide him for the rest of his life. The next morning broke with a soft, golden light that spilled across the plains. Birds chirped in the trees and the horse shifted restlessly, eager to continue the journey. Eli woke with a renewed sense of purpose. The events of the previous days, the storm, the wild animals, and the rough terrain, had taught him lessons that no book or ranch work ever could. He now understood the importance of patience, observation, and respect. But today felt different. Today, he sensed the chance to grow closer to his companions and to learn more about the people and culture he had only glimpsed so far. As he mounted the horse, Kaya and Ayana began walking alongside, their movements as graceful and coordinated as ever. The trail ahead wound through hills that rolled like waves across the horizon. Each step required careful attention, as rocks, uneven ground, and hidden dips could easily unseat an inexperienced rider. Eli felt more confident than before, though he still relied heavily on the sisters' guidance. He realized that learning to read the land was just as important as controlling the horse. For the first time, Eli began to notice the small details of his companions' personalities. Kaya had a quiet authority, her eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, always aware of what others might miss. She had a gift for seeing patterns, paths, signs of water, and subtle changes in the weather that he had never noticed before. Yana, on the other hand, carried a curiosity that balanced Kaya's steadiness. She asked questions, observed closely, and shared insights in ways that encouraged Eli to think differently. Together, they complemented each other perfectly, and Eli realized he had never traveled with people so skilled and attentive. By midday, the trio had reached a wide valley where a river wound like a silver ribbon across the land. Eli dismounted, letting the horse drink at the edge of the water. Kaya collected stones and examined the ground near the river, while Ayana began to gather edible plants. Eli watched them, noticing how methodical and careful they were. They moved not just to survive, but to understand the land. He began to see that their knowledge was not just practical, it was a form of wisdom, a way of connecting with the world that he had never experienced. Kaya finally spoke, her voice calm but strong. "This river has carried life for generations," she said. "Our people have learned to live with it, not against it. The land gives if we respect it, and it teaches if we are willing to learn." Eli nodded, feeling the depth of her words. He realized that this journey was about more than reaching a destination. It was about understanding, growth, and connection. While Kaya focused on the river, Ayana approached Eli with a smile. "Do you want to try something?" she asked, holding out a small bundle of herbs. She began teaching him how to identify useful plants, how to know which ones could be eaten safely, and how to use them to make a simple meal or medicine. Eli listened carefully, following her instructions, and felt a sense of accomplishment when he correctly identified a few. For the first time, he felt that he was contributing to the group, rather than just relying on the sisters' guidance. After lunch, they continued their journey along the riverbank. The landscape changed again, opening into a meadow where wildflowers swayed in the breeze. Eli felt a moment of peace as he watched the colors ripple across the grass. Kaya noticed his expression and spoke softly. "Beauty is everywhere if you take the time to see it. But do not forget the lessons the land also holds, the hidden dangers, the patterns of the weather, the signs of animals. All of it is part of understanding the world." Eli nodded, realizing that his previous understanding of the plains had been shallow. He had seen the land as something to ride across, but now he began to see it as a living teacher, full of lessons and hidden truths. The sisters were his guides, helping him unlock these lessons, and he felt a growing sense of respect and gratitude. As the afternoon wore on, they encountered a small group of travelers camped along the river. They were traders, moving goods between settlements, and they greeted Eli and the sisters warmly. Kaya and Ayana spoke with them briefly, exchanging news and sharing information about the land. Eli listened, fascinated by the stories and observations of people who traveled the plains regularly. He realized that life on the frontier was full of unexpected encounters, each offering a chance to learn and grow. When the travelers moved on, Eli felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had always believed that adventure meant freedom, excitement, and danger. But now he understood that adventure also meant connection, meeting others, learning from them, and sharing knowledge. He began to see the sisters not just as companions, but as bridges to a world he had never truly understood. As evening approached, the trio reached a small hill overlooking the river valley. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows and bathing the land in golden light. Eli dismounted, letting the horse graze while Kaya and Ayanna explored the hilltop. The sisters began gathering materials to make a small camp for the night, working efficiently and silently. Eli helped where he could, realizing that every small task, building a fire, gathering wood, setting up blankets, was a lesson in care, patience, and respect. Around the fire that evening, the three shared stories. Kaya spoke of her childhood, of learning from elders, and of the importance of courage, wisdom, and understanding. Ayanna spoke of her dreams, of the hopes for her community, and of the lessons learned from observing the land. Eli shared stories of his life on the ranch, of cattle drives and long nights under the stars, but also of the lessons he had learned on this journey. The conversation flowed naturally, filled with laughter, curiosity, and reflection. Eli realized that he was no longer just a traveler or a cowboy. He was part of a small, unlikely family bound not by blood, but by trust, respect, and shared experience. He felt a sense of connection that he had never known before, and it filled him with a quiet joy. As the night deepened, Eli lay on a blanket beside the fire, gazing up at the stars. The vast sky seemed endless, and he felt both small and significant at the same time. He thought about the journey so far, the horse, the storm, the trials, and the lessons, and realized that every step had shaped him. The sisters had taught him more than survival skills. They had taught him to see, to listen, and to respect the world and the people in it. Eli also reflected on the bond forming between them. The sisters had become his teachers, yes, but also his friends. He felt a growing admiration for their courage, intelligence, and compassion. He understood that trust and connection were as important as strength or skill on the plains, and that the relationships he formed would guide him through challenges ahead. Before drifting to sleep, Eli promised himself that he would honor the trust and guidance of the sisters. He would listen, observe, and learn. He would face challenges with patience and courage. And he would carry the lessons of this journey forward, not just as memories, but as principles to guide his actions. That night the fire crackled softly, and the horse grazed nearby, calm and steady. Kaya and Ayanna slept peacefully, their quiet breathing a reminder of the strength and care that surrounded him. Eli felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had already transformed him, teaching him lessons he would carry for the rest of his life. He knew that the days ahead would bring more challenges, more lessons, and more opportunities to grow, but he felt ready. The plains were vast, unpredictable, and full of surprises, but Eli no longer feared the unknown. He had companions who taught him, a horse that carried him reliably, and the courage to face whatever lay ahead. For the first time, he understood that the journey was not just about reaching a destination. It was about learning, growing, and forming connections that would last a lifetime. As he finally closed his eyes, Eli felt a quiet peace. He had discovered that true strength was not just in riding fast, surviving storms, or facing danger. It was in understanding, respect, and the bonds we form with those around us. And with that realization, he drifted into a deep, restorative sleep, ready to meet the adventures of the next day. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the horizon, spilling soft light across the plains. Eli awoke with a mixture of anticipation and melancholy. After days of traveling, learning, and growing with Kaya and Ayanna, he knew that soon, Their journey together would come to an end. Yet, he also felt a quiet pride in how far they had come as a team, and in the lessons he had learned along the way. Eli mounted his horse, feeling the familiar strength beneath him. Kaya and Ayana walked beside him, their expressions calm but reflective. There was a sense of completion in the air, as if the land itself recognized that the chapter of their shared journey was nearing its close. Eli realized that this trip had been far more than a simple adventure. It had been a journey of understanding, trust, and personal growth. As they rode toward the community where Kaya and Ayana lived, Eli thought back over the days behind him. The storm, the rough terrain, and the encounter with wild animals had tested him physically and mentally. But it was the quiet moments, learning from the sisters, observing the land, listening to stories, that had transformed him most. He realized that courage, strength, and skill were only part of the equation. Wisdom, patience, and connection mattered just as much, if not more. When they reached the edge of the community, the trio paused. The houses and dwellings of the Apache people appeared nestled among the trees, the smoke of small fires rising gently into the morning sky. Eli felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that the journey had been successful and safe, sadness because this chapter of companionship was ending. He dismounted carefully, patting the horse gently. It had carried him through the challenges with unwavering patience and loyalty, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude. Kaya stepped forward, her eyes meeting Eli's. "You have done well," she said quietly, her voice warm but firm. "You have learned the ways of the land, shown respect, and grown stronger in spirit. Remember these lessons, and they will guide you through all challenges you face." Eli nodded, feeling the weight of her words. They were not just praise. They were a reminder of responsibility, honor, and the importance of carrying forward what he had learned. Gianna added softly, "You have been brave, Eli, but bravery is not about recklessness. It is about understanding, patience, and care. You have shown all of these. Remember them always." Her smile was gentle, yet her eyes reflected a depth of respect that touched Eli more than words could convey. He felt that he had truly earned their trust, and in return, he had gained wisdom he would carry for the rest of his life. Eli spent the day in the community, learning more from Kaya and Gianna about their people, traditions, and way of life. They introduced him to elders who shared stories of the past, teachings about the land, and advice for living with integrity and respect. Eli listened intently, absorbing the knowledge and feeling a profound connection to a culture that was both new and deeply meaningful to him. He realized that the journey had been more than a physical adventure. It had been an education in life, patience, and understanding. In the evening, they gathered by a small fire outside one of the dwellings. Eli, Kaya, and Ayana shared a quiet meal together. The sisters laughed softly as they told stories from their childhood, while Eli recounted moments from his ranch life. Though their experiences were different, they discovered shared values: courage, respect, family, and the desire to face challenges with wisdom and integrity. Eli felt a sense of belonging he had never known before. For a moment, he understood that connection was the true reward of this journey. As night fell, Eli reflected on the journey as a whole. He had started with $12, seeking only a horse and the freedom it represented. But along the way, he had gained so much more: knowledge, skills, understanding, and companionship. He realized that the real value of the journey was not in the horse, but in the relationships he had formed and the lessons he had learned. Every obstacle, every challenge, and every moment of quiet reflection had contributed to his growth. Kaya and Ayana joined him by the fire, their presence calm and reassuring. Eli felt compelled to express his gratitude. "Thank you," he said sincerely, "for your guidance, your patience, and your trust. I have learned more than I ever imagined, and I will carry these lessons with me always." Kaya placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression warm. It was not only about teaching you, she said softly. It was about sharing the way of our lives and seeing how a traveler can grow when he respects the land and the people around him. Iana nodded. You have proven yourself to be more than a cowboy who wanted a horse. You have shown courage, respect, and understanding. That is what will guide you forward, no matter where your path leads. Eli felt a surge of pride and humility. He had begun this journey with little more than money and ambition. Now, he carried wisdom, experience, and connections that were priceless. The following day, Eli prepared to leave the community and continue his journey alone. Kaya and Ayana walked with him to the edge of the village, their expressions a mixture of warmth and solemnity. Eli mounted his horse, feeling the strength and loyalty beneath him, and looked back at the sisters. I will never forget this journey, he said quietly. Thank you for everything. Kaya smiled, her eyes reflecting pride and care. Remember the lessons, Eli. Respect the land, trust those around you, and face challenges with patience and courage. And remember that you are never truly alone if you carry these values with you. Yana added, Farewell, traveler. May your path be safe and may you continue to grow with every step. Eli rode slowly at first, savoring the final moments of their companionship. The wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of trees, flowers, and the distant river. He felt a deep connection to the land, to the horse, and to the lessons he had learned. Every hill, every tree, and every stream seemed to hold a memory of the journey he had shared with Kaya and Ayana. He realized that this adventure had shaped him in ways he could never have imagined. As he rode further, Eli reflected on the meaning of the journey. $12 had bought him a horse, but the true cost and the true value of the journey were measured in the experiences, lessons, and connections he had gained. He understood that life was about more than possessions or achievements. It was about learning, growing, and forming meaningful relationships. Every challenge, every moment of patience, and every act of respect had shaped him into a wiser, more thoughtful person. The horse moved steadily beneath him, sensing Eli's mood and offering silent support. He thought about the dangers they had faced together, the storm, the wild animals, and the rough terrain. Those challenges had tested him, but they had also taught him resilience, calmness, and confidence. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it, with wisdom and care. As the sun began to set, Eli reached a ridge overlooking the valley where he had first met Kaya and Ayana. The sight of the land bathed in golden light filled him with gratitude. He could see the trails they had traveled, the river that had guided them, and the hills and plains that had tested them. Every detail reminded him of the journey's lessons: patience, respect, trust, courage, and connection. He knew that these lessons would guide him for the rest of his life. That night, Eli camped alone under the stars, reflecting on the journey. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment and peace. The adventure had given him far more than he had expected. He had gained knowledge, friendship, and understanding. He had faced challenges and emerged stronger. He had learned to see the world differently, to respect it, and to navigate it with care and wisdom. As he drifted to sleep, Eli promised himself that he would carry the lessons forward. He would treat others with respect, observe the land carefully, and approach challenges with patience and courage. He would honor the trust and guidance of Kaya and Ayana by living with integrity and awareness. The plains had taught him more than he had ever imagined, and he felt ready to continue his journey into the unknown. The next morning, Eli rose with renewed determination. He mounted his horse, feeling the strength and loyalty of his companion beneath him. The sun rose slowly, painting the plains in soft gold, and Eli knew that his journey was far from over. But he also knew that he carried with him wisdom, courage, and the lessons of a journey that had changed him forever. $12 had bought him a horse, yes, but the true wealth of this adventure lay in the experiences, the growth, and the connections he had gained along the way. With the wind in his face and the vast horizon ahead, Eli rode forward. The lessons of the journey would guide him, the memory of Kaya and Iana would inspire him, and the spirit of the plains would always remind him of the power of patience, respect, and courage. He had begun the journey seeking adventure, but he had discovered so much more: understanding, growth, and the true meaning of connection. And as the horse carried him steadily across the open land, Eli felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, confident that the journey had prepared him for life itself.